Okay, well, if it was me and I was choosing what kind of dissertation to do, I might think about doing an evidence-based practice dissertation if there was something that I was doing in my clinical practice that I was unsure about, that I'd identified a problem or a sticking point in some of the things that we were doing. Things weren't working as well as they could be working. And I might be able to understand the reasons behind that more clearly if I carefully looked at the evidence that was available to tell me about that aspect of what I do. I might also think about doing an evidence-based practice dissertation if I wanted to change the way that we did something. If there was a new way of doing something that I'd heard about or that I'd seen or that somebody had mentioned to me, but which lacked that clear sort of foundation in evidence that we would need to be sure about before we went ahead and made quite an important decision to change the way that we did things that have actually affected the people in our care. So in all of these circumstances, I might want to do an evidence-based practice dissertation because it will help me to gather together and critically review a significant amount of evidence that will help me to resolve a clinical issue or make a decision about whether to change the way that I'm doing something. Well, it involves an extended and critical review of the literature, of the research literature, essentially. That means that you have to focus on your searching skills, your skills that are to do with searching for evidence in a systematic way, a systematic and comprehensive way, so that you actually identify all the relevant evidence as far as that is possible. It means thinking about why you are doing what you're doing, what the reasons for it are, developing a rationale for doing what you're doing, so that you set out a clear case to say that this is important, and if we find an answer that will be of benefit to us in our work. It involves developing your critical skills, because when you conduct a wide-ranging and systematic review of research literature, you find all sorts of things. You need to be able to pinpoint the right kind of evidence for your question, and you need to be able to sort the high quality evidence from the poor quality evidence, and that involves making sure that you are critically appraising the evidence that you find. So you will need to go back to your the work that you've done previously on the procedures that you use to critically appraise different kinds of research, and that could be critically appraising many different types of research, from randomized controlled trials to narrative research or to ethnographies and so on. So you need to have all of those critical appraisal skills at your fingertips, and you need to be able to synthesize results from a range of research studies, maybe 10 or 11 or 9, 10, 11 kind of research studies, bringing together the findings from those in a way that communicates the key messages, but also takes into account the strengths and limitations of that research, so that you're actually making coming to a judgment about the overall strength of the evidence and what it tells you. Well, I think I've mentioned in my previous answer something about the challenges. It's really quite challenging to search systematically and carefully. This means that you do have to be very particular and meticulous about making sure that the methods, the strategies that you use for your searching don't lead you to overlook important pieces of evidence. That means being very careful and systematic. Critical appraisal skills are quite challenging. They mean that you have to understand the underlying research methods of the research studies that you're reviewing, so that you can come to a judgment about whether the researchers have conducted that research in the right way, and in a way that will give them confidence and you confidence that their findings are actually based on sound evidence. And skills of synthesis are ones that you develop over a period of time, and in writing an EBP dissertation you will probably need to sort of draft and then redraft sections of it so you get it right. And you need to be able to balance strengths and weaknesses against each other to come to an overall conclusion about what a body of evidence is telling you. And the final challenge that I would highlight just at the end of this question, people tend to come to the last chapter, which is about developing a dissemination strategy, and heave a sigh of relief that they can see the finishing post in sight and stop. But don't stop before you've given your full attention to the last chapter, because a lot of people just seem so glad that it's nearly over that they finish in a couple of pages. It's worth keeping it going right to the end of the dissertation.